Hi and welcome to Swedish Plant Guys. Today we're going to talk about a topic that you guys have asked us a lot regarding. And it is about cuttings that hasn't started to grow. It's been days, weeks, months. Now we're going to talk about it. I'm going to ask a lot of questions and these guys are going to give us the answer. Now, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do and hit the bell so you get a notification every time we put out new content. Now let's go. Okay guys, so the quick answer.
Always a quick answer. And the quick answer is have patience.
Oh, God.
You need patience when you're dealing with plants.
Yeah. All right. All right, that's a good one. That's a good one. Now, so before we're starting the whole discussion or debate, now what is a cutting?
Well, I guess it's easier if we start by showing a few examples.
This is mainly because if you're new to the channel, new to the topic, it could be good to really deep down or do a deep dive into what it is. So please.
So basically a cutting is what we call a way to propagate a new plant, to get like a new plant from another part.
Your plant has grown, it's become large or too large, you need to cut it. So why not try and propagate it at the same time? So we have two different types of plants here. You have a pothos that actually have 3 cuttings in this little vase here. And this is a Dracena cinto, which only has 1 cutting. So basically what we mean is that you take a plant, we have a Geflera here. You take a plant that has become a little bit too large, and then we make a quick cut. Now we always make that cut in between 2 nodes. A node is where a leaf is coming out from. So we make it in between 2 nodes. Like this.
You want me to hold it?
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, we have a lot of nodes there. We take it there.
That's a major cut.
It's a major cut, but what's going to happen here is that this plant will actually start to regrow from this point. So this node here where you have a leaf coming out from, this is actually where a bud will get activated and then it will start to grow. If we're lucky, and we usually are lucky, we'll get more than 1. So there can be buds activated on this leaf as well and on this leaf as well. So we actually get 3 different new stems coming out from this plant. So we're actually helping this to become fuller and bigger. Now, the cutting is this one here. So what we do with this is that we want to place this in water. Now this is a very, very simple way of just making it start to grow roots, and then we can plant this into soil or another substrate and we have a new plant. Now what we do and what we always need to do is that we need to have at least 1 leaf left on this, and we need 1 node in water. That's all you need. But we always recommend that if you can, then try and get at least a couple of nodes in the water. And we leave 3 to 5 leaves. If you leave too many leaves, what can happen is that the plant has all of this foliage to focus on. So it will not produce any roots from down here, because it just needs to push water all the time to be able to give this what it wants.
And that can depend on which type of plant you use as well. Like this type, it doesn't hurt to have a bunch of more leaves on it than that type of plant. So it's a bit different, but if you just go by those simple rules, it usually works well.
Save 2 to 5 leaves, and you need a couple of nodes, if you can, in water. So we just remove these leaves here, like this, without harming the plant or harming the cutting here. And I think we'll stop somewhere around there. Now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have potentially 6 nodes that could go underwater. This is a cutting.
Good. Now, the ones that you talked about in the beginning here that you showed us, I can see visually that there are roots coming out from these. How old are these ones? Just it's a...
yeah, this Dracena here, this cutting is around 3 months old, I think.
All right.
It actually took around 3 to 4 weeks before we could see any progress with the roots here. I'll see if I can get this out so we can show you.
3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks
Look at
before
that.
anything happened. But now it looks like this. And actually now we are at the point where we would recommend you to place this into soil or place this into a substrate and get a new plant from this. Because you have a couple of inches of roots. Then it's time to move it to soil.
Okay. Now, so potentially say that I follow these steps that you just spoken about, or the tips that you've given me. Does it need anything else to start to grow? Like, can we push it, or like, how often do I need to exchange the water, or I mean, what do I do?
Before we answer that, there is some plants that actually doesn't need nodes to count as a cutting.
Such as?
We have such as the Samioculcas.
The CC plant.
The CC plant. As you
take
see,
this
yeah,
out
if you
here.
show, this doesn't have any nodes. You just cut the stem.
Okay.
Now, what we could have done here is that we could have cut it right here on the stem, and then we could have had some nodes in the water. Remove these leaves here and have the water here.
What could have happened if you've done that?
It would basically work exactly the same. You could have an higher success rate, maybe, but with this type of plant, you actually don't need a node, as he said. You just need the stem as well, because you can see here that it's starting to push out roots. So
It's usually easier to not use the nodes because it becomes like a prettier plant as well.
very quickly it
Yeah.
looks like a normal plant.
Yeah, I would say aesthetically it would be really
Yeah.
nice to have, as we've done here, a couple of them in a vase, and yeah, that's nice. I guess that's something that interior decorators would like as well, probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah.
So if we should start to talk about what you need, what a cutting needs.
Yeah.
The most important thing is fresh water. You need fresh water as often as possible, or at least, if you can, once a day. If you can change the water once a day, that's the best. You give the plant the best possible chance to
So
grow.
maybe you could say, like, whenever you have breakfast,
Yeah.
give breakfast to the plant.
Yeah, you could say that. Change the
That's
water.
perfect. But depending on where you live in the world, you might need to use bottled water or filtered water or even rainwater, because it needs to be clean water.
Yeah.
Because if you have bacteria or anything else in the water, it could potentially ruin your cutting.
Oh, okay.
So the best to think about it is if you can drink the water, it's good for the plant.
Okay.
So use water you yourself can drink. That's the best, the best time.
And then it also needs light. So exchange the water as often as you can, and then it needs light. And when we say light, we mean indirect sunlight. So it needs to be placed somewhere where it gets a lot of light, but no direct sunlight. Now the reason for this is that if you put this somewhere where it gets sunlight, it gets very hot. And what happens is that the plant, only thing it can concentrate on is pushing water through the plant, because to handle that heat. So it will never push any roots down here. But it wants a lot of light, but no direct sunlight.
Well, now a follow-up question on that one. The CC plant doesn't. It says it could be like in Sweden we call it garderobsblomma, wardrobe plant. Could it potentially work the same way for just specific the CC plant? Could that one potentially grow new roots without indirect sunlight, like a darker placement in the house?
You need, because this is a plant that doesn't need much light.
Right.
Yeah, it would probably work.
I guess it needs less light than other plants, but it's still.
But potentially to make it grow, you should follow the steps.
You should follow and give it light.
All right. Okay.
Our recommendation is no matter what type of plant you get the cutting from, place it in indirect sunlight so it gets a lot of light, because you're helping. You want the plant to just feel good, to get everything that it needs so it can start producing those roots, because that's what we want. The quicker, the better.
Yeah, and even if the CC plant should be able to grow roots in a darker place, it would take much longer time. So put it in light.
Guys, no matter what.
Exactly.
Just write that one down. No matter what, follow these steps.
We get a lot of questions concerning cuttings as well on fertilizer. Do I need to add fertilizer to this water that I exchange often?
Interesting.
And the answer is no, you don't. Because you're not trying to sustain the plant itself. You're not trying to help with the processes within the plant. You want to grow new roots. And all you need to do that is water. So we never add fertilizer to a cutting. Never.
Really? You don't want the plant to focus on growing. You want the plant to focus on getting a way to get the water in.
Yeah.
And I'll show you an example here. I have a monstera here. Ooh. This is 2 cuttings in the same vase here. And this monstera has been standing as a cutting. We cut it as a cutting, and it's been standing in only water, nothing else, for over 1 year. And you can see here that it has a lot of roots.
Yeah, but the roots are green here.
The roots are green.
Yeah.
These are so-called water roots. Usually the water roots turn a little bit green in color. It's not algae, it's not anything wrong with it. They have a white or a slightly green color to it. But that is also depending on what type of plant it is. But usually it looks something like this. Now the monstera has the ability as well to do this. It has actually sent out air roots. And this is of course helping the plant to get enough air. Because the problem here when you have a plant in pure water, in only water like this, is how does it get air? Because you need water and you need air for the roots. That is a balance we talk a lot about on this channel. And the monstera solves this problem by sending out these air roots. But when you exchange the water, the new water you give has a lot of air in it. It has a lot of oxygen in it. So when you're exchanging the water, you're not only exchanging and taking away so that the water doesn't have the wrong pH or something like that. You're also adding oxygen for the roots. That's why we want to exchange it almost every day on a cutting. Now this here has been standing for over a year, and I exchanged the water for this plant once a week instead. Okay. But as you can see, it has never gotten fertilizer, ever. It's only water.
So these air roots wasn't there from the beginning. They are actually
no. It has sent out these as the cutting has grown.
Amazing.
Now I know a lot of people also say that you should be adding something else to the water. You can add sugar or alcohol, or don't do that because it's not needed. Yes, a small amount of sugar and a small amount of alcohol could potentially help with water uptake because it can stimulate the roots a little bit, but don't do that. Keep it simple. Keep it easy.
Yeah, because if you accidentally give too much, you'll just harm the plant instead. So
all of a sudden the plant can just die, and it's probably because you've added something you should.
From our experience, we say only use water, clean water.
Yeah. So back to maybe original questions that we've gotten on our channel from you guys. Like it's taken so long, it's taken weeks, it's taken months. Like, I mean, you said patience. Yeah, you need to have patience. But like, is there anyone or any specific type of plant that grows faster roots or slower roots or potentially like, you know?
This actually varies a lot depending on what type of plant you have taken the cutting from. But it can also depend on a lot of other things. Because if I take two cuttings from the exact same plant, I place them in water, the same type of water, I place them next to each other in indirect sunlight, you will see that those two cuttings will have two completely different growing times. Mm-hmm. One of the cuttings might get new roots in 1 week. One of the cuttings might get new roots after 1 month. So it's completely dependent on a lot of different variables. Now, for instance, it can be dependent on the water you give. For instance, we tried sometimes we say exchange the water daily. But what happens if we don't do that? So we made a small experiment that we exchanged one of the cuttings every day and one of the cuttings every week. Were there a difference? Yes, there were. But it's hard to say if it's because of that water or if it's just because of the cuttings itself are different. They're not the same. Even if they come from the same mother plant, they're different. But there are other
that makes it even more difference if you compare yourself with another person who took a similar cutting, because the whole climate in your home affects how fast it will grow.
How much light?
Yes.
How much humidity?
The temperature
exactly.
you have in your home.
And how often you change the water. There are so many variables. Draft could be one. Definitely, you should always keep your cuttings away from drafts. That's just an easy way to get success.
What I'm hearing here is like it's almost like a DNA structure within the cutting. Like this cutting it comes from the same mother plant, but you have two different ones with the same amount of water and same placement and everything, but it could take a week from one and a month from another.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not unusual. That's actually just normal. So have patience. We come back to the quick answer. Have patience. But so when would you start to worry then? That's another way to see. If you see that something is wrong with the plant, then you need to act.
Such as?
Well, it could be that some of we recommend you, for instance, to always take a look at the cut here. So let's see. I think we have one here that's not actually looking that well. Oh, well, we can use that one as well. We can compare them. So we have two different here. Now, one of them actually has a lot of roots, as you see. We've taken these cuttings at the same time. They get exactly the same water. They are in the same vase. But as you can see here, something has happened to one of them. And what actually happened here is that it started to rot. The cutting itself has started to rot. Now, this one hasn't. It actually has a lot of new roots to it. So why doesn't it work for this one? Well, I don't know. Something has become wrong with this one. Now, we can actually see here that there are some roots coming out from where the stem is better. Mm-hmm. But my recommendation, or our recommendation here, is that this shouldn't stay on the cutting. So if something happens like this, you start over. Yeah. You just take out a scissor or a shearer and make a new cut, put it back into the vase, and let it start over.
Yeah, I had a question regarding that. Like, if it is that you can see that there is something wrong, such as it was with this one, could that affect the other ones when they're standing in the same vase? Like, should you act instantly and cut it, or take it away?
You should as soon as you can, because it can pollute the water.
It could,
yeah. So, but if you change water every day, you should notice if this happens with a plant.
Regarding this, that we're using transparent vases here, is that something that we should do? Or should we really give,
Perfect question.
Thank you.
No, this is actually to show you. You can do it like this, as we can show here, because they have been standing in these vases. So it works. But it is a good thing to keep them in darker vases or completely covered vases, because the roots don't want light.
Right.
They're not used to light, they don't want light. They used to be down into the ground, if we're talking nature. So no, don't do it if you don't want to. It could be a decorative way to show off your cuttings, then fine, do it, but know that you will probably get better results if you have dark vases or covered vases.
So usually a lot of people uses like a glass and put just a normal drinking glass, and it's not optimal, but it works. But if you have the opportunity to use something that dark, it's dark.
Yeah, so
it's better.
So it could be that some of you guys don't have like a vase over or something like that. Maybe a coffee mug or something like a mug.
Use a mug
cup
instead,
or something like that would be better. All right, good. I have another question.
Yep.
So this is just, I guess I want to know it because it's a fun fact. Have you ever heard, like, in an extreme case, or like this cutting has been standing for years, or it's been massive, or something like that, and nothing has happened, but it hasn't been a negative effect, it's just been standing there, just like a piece in the home? Like have you heard anything like that? Or
I don't know if years maybe, but like the CC plant can take over half a year at least.
I've heard this over 6 months before anything happens. It just stands like this, it looks like this, but no roots. But as long as it looks good, as he said, as long as it looks fine, just keep exchanging that water, just have patience.
6 months, that's a long time.
Months.
That's a long time. All right, but as you say, as long as it looks fine, why not?
But we have to think about it like this. What we're doing is that we're going into this plant and we're cutting it. So the mother plant actually doesn't care that much because it has everything it needs. It has a lot of nutrients, it has water, it has the ability to just start to grow. But for this little cutting here, it's actually quite stunted because we've gone in and cut it off. It doesn't have roots. Something has happened, it doesn't know what. As we speak now, it's actually trying to push water. It cannot because it's not in water anymore. So the longer you wait to get this into water, the worse it can get. Because over time, these small, we call them water tubes that transport the water, they will actually close up. So you want this to get to water as quickly as possible, to start to push that water into the plant.
So if you're getting a cutting from, say, a friend's home and you're going to bring it home before you put it in water, make it a bigger cutting from the start. So when you get home and just before you put it in water, just as you do with your cut flowers, you do a new cut. And that helps.
Because the tubes within the stem would probably close up or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. They're usually closed. So if you've ordered a cutting online and it's been in the mail for a long period of time, make a new clean cut before you put it into water.
Like if it comes from mail, like how long can a cutting survive without water?
Well, it actually depends on how they transport it. Usually they take some kind of cotton or paper or something that they wet and they keep around, and then they put plastic around it. So you have this small bubble of humid air with a little bit of water. So it can actually withstand a long period of time before it starts to break down. But when you remove all of that, make a new cut to make a fresh cut and then put it into water.
Yeah. I remember now, I don't know where I saw it, but I've seen like a little tube where they put a cutting in and had like a little lid on it so you can transport it. And that wasn't more than that. It's just like a little, but it was like a water container.
Exactly. But we also have, so what's the difference between a cutting and a cut flower?
Yeah, what is the difference?
Well, the difference is usually that a cut flower is, usually it's a flower that you've cut off, but it could potentially be a stem as well. But a cut flower usually don't have any nodes on it. So it will not start to produce any roots. But a cutting, as we said before, should have some nodes that could start to grow. So this is a cutting, it's not a cut flower.
So cut flower could be a tulip.
Yeah, tulip is a cut flower, exactly. But it will not start to produce any roots.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And another tip is while you have your cutting and it's growing roots, if the leaves starts, we have one here. If the leaf starts to get old or bad, it's better to take them away from the plant so they don't keep getting nutrients from.
Right,
from
and it's trying to help it to oh, this leaf is.
Although if you
yeah.
go too far, you won't have any leaves left. Then that cutting won't.
So that's also one of the reasons we say just keep 2 to 5 leaves left on the cutting, because this has actually a lot of leaves here, and all of these leaves need water. They need some stored nutrients from the stem, so it takes a lot of the plant to keep this alive. So that's probably why one of these leaves here started to hang, because this needs to be repotted probably. So the nutrients within the plant here is actually starting to go away. So the leaves will start to die. But it doesn't have to be like that, because as we said here, some plants could potentially just continue to grow in water like this.
And that's a good advice to look for when you are going to do a cutting. What does this plant need, and how could I do it, and the process of the whole thing. Is it difficult? Like if you're a beginner and you're trying to oh, here's a cutting. What's a cutting? Like, okay, and now I know you guys have discussed it, but is it a tough thing to do? Is it hard? What's your opinion about it?
Usually not.
No?
Just try.
What the success rate is what?
Ooh, it's depending on the plant itself,
Okay.
but I would say better than 50%.
Yeah.
So usually this works,
Yeah.
no matter what type of plant you have.
All right.
If you have at least one leaf and at least one node into water, you will probably succeed. This is why we usually recommend placing a cutting in water, because it gives you a higher success rate than if you should put this into soil. You could basically take this cutting here and just put it down into, just straight down into soil instead.
Success rate on that?
Less than 50%, I would say, at least with a Schefflera like this one, because what happens in soil, you have a lot of bacteria, fungus, you have how moist or how wet or how dry should the soil be. You remove all of those problems by just placing it into water and exchanging that water.
Yeah,
every
and
day.
all of those things that you said, like when you put it in, you have so many different things that affects the cutting.
Yeah.
But that's also depending on what type of plant you do that in soil with, or
Yeah.
is it? But in general, it's a less success rate
In
when you
general,
put it.
yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Like a Dracaena here, like this one here, we very often put a cutting straight down into soil or straight down into pumice. And I don't know, 7 or 8 times out of 10, it actually
probably,
works. It grows new roots, and it continues to grow as a new plant. So on a Dracaena, it's very, very, very simple, I would say. But I would never take a CC plant like this, cut it and put it right down into soil, because I'm guessing now that the success rate may be 1 or 2 out of 10 instead.
Ooh.
So there's a huge difference depending on what type of plant. But by placing it straight into water, you get the highest chance of success, because you're eliminating all of those other variables. You're just keeping this to water and light.
Okay.
That's it.
You usually get a clear indicator faster when you put it in soil if it's going to work or not. Usually within a few weeks, if it's not working, you're going to see the stem is getting like mushy, and maybe the leaves are being more sloping, yeah,
wilting.
You usually see that faster, but as we said, the success rate is lower, so do it in water instead.
Okay, so I've done this, and I see now that the roots are out there. on the different varieties that we have here, when should I put it into soil or pumice or any other substrate for that matter? What's your opinion regarding that?
Well, usually we recommend that you have at least 1 to 2 inches of roots. So 2.5 to 5 centimeters of roots before you make the transition into soil or pumice.
Are you okay with just having one root in that length, or do you need to have at least 1, 2, 3, or how many? I'm trying to fish for the
Yeah, it's of course it's always better if you have more roots, of course, but if it's taken a really long time to get any roots, it could potentially be that you have to make a decision. Yeah. Should I wait even longer in water, where it could potentially, like we said, seen here, you could potentially start to lose some foliage, or should you try and win with that one root?
And I guess it's how patient you are, how fast you want to try to make it work. And as long as the plant looks healthy in water, it's no problem to leave it in water to get more roots. But if you start seeing the stem getting a bit mushier and you already have roots, put it in your substrate.
Yeah, I was going to ask
because if you leave it in water, probably it's gonna go bad.
I was wondering, like, is there a deadline? When do we have to take it out from the water? Like you said, 1 or 2 inches of roots.
Yeah, that's just a general recommendation.
And if I only have one, then it's like, should I wait or should I not? Yes. Like, because if it gets too long, as you say, you could see the stem, you could feel it a little bit, something's going on with the foliage. It's time, we gotta go.
But we have, on this channel, we actually have specific propagation videos for specific plants. We have one for instance, for pothos here. There we go in more in detail exactly how long you should wait, how long the roots should be. So, but in a general, 1 to 2 inches.
Regarding that video, I'll put a link right up here and you can go and watch it afterwards, this one. Yeah, so anything else that you want to recommend us? Is there anything to think about? Like if I'm a beginner or if I'm advanced, like I'm trying to...
Now, what we're trying to say, I think, we've tried to summarize this, is just have patience. It can take a long time before you see any roots. As long as the plant is looking good, just leave it and continue to exchange that water as often as you can. Place it somewhere where it's bright, indirect sunlight, and it will probably work. But have patience. It takes time with plants. Some plants grow fast, some plants grow slowly. It can be the exact same type of plant, but they act very differently. So just have patience and keep a watchful eye. Keep a watchful eye on the leaves to see that it's healthy. Keep a watchful eye on the bottom of the stems here so that they're not starting to rot or something. Make that new cut. Just keep a watchful eye and have patience.
Yeah, and if you only take away one thing from this video, change the water as often as you can. That's the most important thing.
That's the most important thing. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Please give this a thumbs up if you liked the video. If you want more content like this, hit the bell so you get a notification every time we put out something new. If you want, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where you can get sneak previews and upcoming videos, etc. And until next time.
Hej då!